Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and in today's video, sponsored by the makers of Rise of Kingdoms, we're going to compare Arch versus Pincer. Not in a hypothetical sense, now we've got some data, because I ran some tests with Queen to try to figure out, hey, like, should you make the conversion or not? So in this video, you can use the timestamps to jump to whichever part you'd like. We're going to start by talking about why it is that this testing was important and the sort of theory behind what I thought would happen. Then we'll get into the methodology of the test results themselves. Spoiler alert, might not have been what you would expect here. This is Pincer, this is Arch. Arch was the winner. We'll talk about it. Lots to talk about in this video. All right, so let's start with what I expected would happen. Courtesy of the data we got from Davor and Ruz from the King's Codex, I expected double smite to absolutely slay with the Pincer formation. In other words, if I pair together William Wallace, okay, and Liu Che, I would expect that I would have an outperform situation. Pincer would dramatically outperform Arch. And so in order to test that, what we did is Queen and I went into a arc balanced mode where you basically have a custom match. You can set whatever you'd like for the equipment. We had the exact same equipment, the exact same talent build. The only thing different is that I used Pincer and all the legendary inscriptions. She used Arch and all the legendary inscriptions. And we ran it head to head to see what would win. I'll put a table of the results on screen in just a minute here, okay? From there, I had a really good question come in from Mars Invasion. And he said, hey, bro, like, what about Liu Che Alex? Is that combo supposed to use Pincer or Arch? So we did the same sort of shenanigans, locked in the same set of equipment, which, by the way, was like KVK helmet and weapon, Hope Cloak and Eternal Night. We got the gloves and the boots from the set. We used the Greatest Glory and the Horn, okay, on like all the marches, all the same stuff, okay? And we had those go head to head. All right. And we wanted to see like, hey, what would it be? And going into this test session, my sort of expectation based on the video I did yesterday and the data we got from Davor was, hey, look, if you are not going to be swarmed and you're using double smite, then for sure you should use Pincer. And in situations where you probably are going to get swarmed, like if you're garrisoning and it's like a flag or even could be a fort, right? But definitely not a pass. Pass, you're not really worried about getting swarmed. Multi-rally, sure. But if you're in a situation where you could get swarmed, Arch starts to look really compelling because that is a shocking amount of normal attack damage boost, which is going to wreck everybody that's hitting you. And that is going to be really, really good. That is sort of my expectation. And for the open field, I would expect Pincer to be stronger. The other thing I really wanted to understand about Pincer, which we got to look at and we'll talk about later in this video, is the way that some of these inscriptions work. And specifically, there was a theory presented to me. Chisgule, this legendary inscription, which you could get as a KVK reward, says that whenever their troop deals smite damage, the target takes 20% increased smite damage for the next 3 seconds. The effect can trigger multiple times per second. So the idea was, well, Chisgule, does the AoE on Liu Che hitting 5 targets mean that you get 5 stacks of this before it enters into cooldown? Making the target, if Liu Che were to hit AoE, would the target take 100% more smite damage? Ooh, okay, we got to go test that too. Very interesting to go test that. So long story short, for a rally garrison situation, Arch and Pincer, I think, are pretty close, and you could even make an argument because of the math that we looked at yesterday and not accounting for this one legendary inscription, Invincible. You could make the argument that Arch is likely to be better. And I would probably steer you in that direction if I had to guess, especially for a garrison situation. But for the open field, the way this inscription works is for every 20% of units lost, you start gaining normal attack. It sucks for open field. Definitely, I would make the argument that Pincer seems much better. Airtight seems much better for the open field. Specifically for this part over here. Whenever you deal smite damage, you take 10% less damage for the next 3 seconds. That's so good on your smite damage dealers. So we went into this custom arc practice match. We had the exact same stuff. I slightly blundered by having this city theme on. Okay, so I have plus 3% health. I had no token buff, so to even out the 3 health, she had 5% defense. It's not quite the same, but it's close enough to run the stinking test, which we did. Let's pull up the results. The first thing we wanted to do is see the William Wallace, Liu Che, okay? Double smite has got a slay, and that matched my expectation. I'll flip through the 7 reports we did really quickly, and the reason I run 7 is that I really want to make sure that, like, there's no randomness that's influencing the result. It used to always drive me nuts when people do, like, one test and declare it, like, the truth. Anyways, so we ran this 7 times, and 100% of the time in the head-to-head duel of everything is the same except one's got Pincer and the other has Arch, Pincer won. All right, Pincer won, which is significant in part because in this Arch situation, it's even benefiting from the fact that you do more normal damage because, like, you're targeting it. So, like, it's taking, this army attacking it is taking more counterattack damage, right? For pure open field, you wouldn't even have that situation necessarily. So, long story short, every single time we had a winner here for the Liu Che and Wallace combo using Pincer. So Pincer got a big W. But then we switched up to the Alexander the Great. And this was much more of a toss-up. It was actually, like, kind of surprising how back and forth this was. So first it was like, okay, Pincer's just doing its thing here, and that won. But then Arch won. Hold up, wait a minute. And then Arch won again. And then we did another one. And Arch won again. And then Pincer got a W. Okay. And then Arch won again. All right. And then Arch won again. So Arch was, in this instance, better. Now, there's a little bit of weirdness here because, like, AoE damage and smite damage isn't really accounted for. So there's a lot of stuff going on with Pincer that, like, I don't know. Maybe because we're doing some AoE damage on the Liu Che, it ends up being better than Arch actually, but it was pretty close. Close enough, though, that I said, okay, we got to look at this and get an average. Let me pull up the averages real quick. All right, so here is the entire list of results from the Pincer versus Arch with the William Wallace Liu Che on both sides. And we averaged a positive trade of 11,390 Sev wounds. Seems good. Okay, so if you're using double smite, and a lot of people are planning to, but a lot are not, that seems amazing. Very good outcome. If you use the Liu Che Alex, Pincer actually traded negative into the Arch by 3,289 Sev wounds on average. Sample size is still really small here. It's only 7. This is, like, not statistically significant, but I thought it was certainly interesting in the result, right? It wasn't, I thought Pincer was probably just going to win all the way around. So it was a little surprising to see it not win in this configuration. So while I think my sort of summary that I was sharing with, like, folks that were asking me was, like, the grand oversimplification was, if you are not getting swarmed, use Pincer. If you're getting swarmed, use Arch. That was my, like, grand oversimplification. I think now a piece of the puzzle is, if you're using 2 smite commanders, use Pincer. And if you are not using 2 smite commanders, you might use Pincer, you might just stick with Arch. But if you think you're going to be in situations where you're getting swarmed, Arch looks pretty dang good. All right. But there is one question that needs to still be resolved before we can fully answer this question. We've got to jump back in game and we got to look at these legendary inscriptions. The question we need to answer is, if Toppler hits multiple targets with an AoE damage, it's like technically 1 instance of smite damage, but you did hit 5 things. Am I going to do 100% more smite damage to the target? So I've got that result for you, and we can pull this up. And I think I want to look at this in the log rather than just tell you the result here, all right? So we go to the log. We go to where the active skill was used. And it takes a little bit of looking, but if I scroll all the way down, Toppler is going to be triggered. The Toppler inscription right over here of the Liu Che armament was triggered this turn. And it applied a debuff onto William Wallace, the opponent, gaining the Vulnerable Vitals effect. Takes effect at the start of the next turn. So we go to the... Oh, and also, Airtight was triggered, by the way. That one is not as exciting. Okay. Let's jump on down here. So, we go down, we get a look, and does the target take 100% more smite damage? Would be insane. Here's Toppler, and it says smite damage received increased by 20%. GG. Now, it could be that each of the targets hit by smite damage now takes more smite damage, and the good news is that I suppose we can figure that out. Maybe. So if we back out of here real quick, we can just look. Can I look? I don't know how many troops they had. Oh, bummer. All units were... We can't obtain intelligence. Bummer. That is weird. I was AoEing into them. I don't know why I don't have intelligence on that. I really kind of like should. They stood there. They didn't actually die. They actually were not all sev wounded or killed. That's really weird. I'm going to put the snippet of this testing on the screen so you know exactly what I did. Because, like, it was legit. I hit 5 things with the AoE, and I can't see what happened there. But anyways, it shows us the thing that I think we needed to see, which is I'm not actually making the target take 100% more smite damage because I hit with 1 ability onto 5 targets. Would have been pretty busted if it worked that way. And if there's any update to that, I will change the pinned comment. So I just that is where you should always look if there's like something we need to talk about. So where does this leave us on Pincer and what to do, right? And I think the answer's a lot more clear for me anyways, that if you have the double smite and you're fielding, bro, Pincer, easy choice. Probably if you're rallying even, you probably just want to put more damage onto the garrison, even though it'd be nice to wreck the swarmers. I think Pincer just really pushes the punish onto the garrison, and you could make an argument for that. At the same time, I still am not comfortable drawing that conclusion completely because we need to rally test. And the thing that gives me pause for doing any rally testing is this effect over here. 12% more normal damage. You'll have kind of like 100% uptime on this in the long run of a fight, but in a test session, it won't be there. So, you know, the way this would work in a test session is you'd have 0% boost. And then, you know, it would start to stack up and start to stack up and start to stack up. But that by the point that you get that, you've already lost a lot of troops. Whereas in a garrison or rally where you're constantly getting reinforced, you're going to have effectively like 12% all damage. It's normal, but for smite commanders, it's like all damage for the duration. So the other thing I'll mention is that we talked about split, right? A split of smite and not smite. And a lot of rallies were Skippy Prime, or actually it was Skippy A, with the Tariq ibn Ziyad. So you had like a smite commander and a skill damage commander. In which case, maybe Arch is better than Pincer. I don't actually know the answer, but that could certainly be the case. If you're doing mixed garrisons with Hera, Gorgo Hera, or, you know, the new Commander Tokugawa with Hera, if you think that's better. I don't know that Pincer is actually the play. Like, it could still be Arch. But I'm going to need to do a lot more testing and figure out exactly what my methodology is going to be before I really can draw that kind of conclusion. That said, I really want to see some battle reports. So if you've got some battle reports, I'm going to open up a special chat on my Discord server, discord.gg/Chisgule. I'm definitely curious for what you've got for Pincer versus, just general results with Pincer, thoughts, comments, anything you want to talk about. Hot topics, I always open up a new thread on my Discord server, discord.gg/Chisgule, so you can go check it out. You enjoyed the vid, throw a like on here, subscribe. I definitely had a lot of fun testing and getting these results. Shout out to Queen for that. And I think it's still like, I know a lot of people just want to use their conversion stones day one. I haven't done that yet, in part because I need way more. But like, also, I'm still figuring out a little bit of what I want to do. Like, I'm a little bit reeling from the fact that skill damage may fade for infantry, or it may not, but it may fade. I would love for that to be a more predictable thing, but I actually have no clue what to tell you for that one. Yeah, I have actually no clue what to tell you. So like, do I stick with the skill damage for the Ragnar Prime and the Skippy? That's such a great combo. But you could also make the argument of just flip it to Pincer, run 2 smite combos in the open field. I originally thought it was going to be like Liu Che with Alexander the Great, and maybe I run Arch on that. And then I use like Wallace and BQ, right? With Pincer. And then maybe I use Ragnar with Philip. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. There's a lot to figure out. You enjoyed the video, throw a like on here, subscribe. If you want to see like the detailed math that I was talking about earlier, check the card in the end screen. Okay. Davor did this math. Incredibly helpful. It kind of predicted the open field result that like with double smite, you should expect to do better. And, you know, look, we could do a bunch of testing against other commanders. There's other methodologies we could use for doing this testing that may also be really valuable to look at. What I'm trying to say is it's all still really preliminary, man. There's still a lot to learn. All right. Enjoyed the vid. Throw a like on here. Subscribe. Until next time, you have fun smashing your enemies. Take care, everybody.